like to call this meeting to order. This is the ad hoc committee for Parkland preservation at 6:30 p.m. Monday, October 25th. Would like to introduce myself. I am the chairperson, Shane Ayershath. We have committee members Mary Teicholz and Frederick Ctte here. And we have our corporation counsel, Robert Yaman, as well as our petitioner, William Montgomery. And then we also have with us Lynn Murray, who's the chair of the Conservation Commission, and we have Patricia Weiner also for the Conservation Commission. We have Sandy Moy from the TPA, that's the Terry Wild Park Authority. And I think we are ready to recap from our last meeting if Corporation Counsel can walk us through what we've done since the last meeting. And kind of recap a little bit of what transpired and then where we are now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, this Parkland Preservation Committee and effort's been around for quite a long time now. Actually, has it been years? And we wanted to finally accomplish something concrete in terms of adding a layer, an additional layer of protection for Parkland, and I think the consensus was that we would begin that effort and process by focusing on kind of the jewel of our parkland, which is of course Terry.
Okay. For the record, we have Dennis Elpern, our director of planning, with us as well.
So, largely through the efforts of our director of planning, we developed amendments to Article 5 of the code designed to add a layer of protection to the park. Again, it would impact solely Terry Wild Park for the time being. And since the last meeting, the planning director introduced some pretty substantive amendments since the draft that we had in our possession at the last meeting, which is why we didn't want to hand it out as a final work product. And I think they've greatly improved the amendments. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things before I turn it over to the planning director. One is that any protections introduced by these amendments will be cumulative. And what I mean by that is it certainly doesn't affect or reduce or decrease any statutory or ordinance protections already in place, such as, just as by way of example, 7163E of the general statutes, which requires hearing procedures, or any other protections that are already extant.
Okay, so just to be clear, so this would be on top of,
right.
It would be an added layer of protection on top of what already exists, not replacing anything.
That's correct.
Okay.
Also, it doesn't really address use changes. We recognize that, but virtually all of the actions affected by these amendments required to be subjected to these new procedures would, as a practical matter, almost always involve changes in use. For example, if you think about if we're going to lease something there, which would be a lease would be subject to these procedures. The lease would almost always affect the change of use. So in other words, indirectly use changes would be subject to scrutiny. And even, a sale typically would almost by definition involve a change, a sale of a parcel of the property would involve a change of use. So in that sense, you know, indirectly, use changes are subjected to the scrutiny of these new plans, but not directly. That might be an improvement that we could introduce at some later date.
All right. Dennis, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Did you all get copies?
Yes.
Do others interested parties have copies? I
No, I know.
No, I can certainly
don't know how many you may.
pass down a couple of these. Actually,
Yeah.
here we go.
Here.
It's for sure.
Okay. Let me go through this. I'm going to skip a minor, what the lawyers call ministerial changes. We're no longer common council, you're city council, those kinds of minor things. I want to start off in the first section, and all of these relate to the Code of Ordinance provisions regarding Terry Law Park Authority. If you can read down 13A-50, B powers and first page, B powers and responsibilities to administer, and it says all structures and land and any. It had adjacent property, but there is a little piece of land that is part of the park, which is not adjacent, so I scratched adjacent. Any property owned by the city, which is made part of the park. Simple as that. 4, to prepare a master plan. The way it's written now, city council prepares the master plan. They have the authority to do that. And of course, that was not done. It was the authority to prepare the master plan. It was referred to city council, who then adopted it. And that's the proper way it should be. And the language that I have in there under 4, all that underlined stuff, is pretty much verbatim from what was in further sections when they talk about city council preparing the plan, except I added the word trails. Because I'm a proponent of the Irish Trail and other trails. Okay. 5, that language, let me see. The first edition, all construction, yeah, that's another carryover. The PCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development, no project shall be constructed if it's inconsistent. That's a reference from the Connecticut General Statutes under section 7-130W. If anybody's interested, I'm sure we can get you a copy of that for nighttime reading. And so all it really says is that is the compatibility with the historic nature and character of the park. Okay. Continuing on, there's a ministerial change, a couple of things. Okay, page, I think, okay, you got page 2. Good. 13A-51, powers and responsibilities, number 2. Bob wanted to add the word encumbrance. I wasn't going to argue. And pursuant to a public hearing, City Council will adopt or acquire land, acquire, sell, etc. lands pursuant to a public hearing. I want to make sure that that is clear. I think you could do that normally, but it just makes it clear, clarifies it. Now, under section A, that's the one with the double parentheses. any proposed acquisition, purchase, sale, etc. of land is referred to the Planning Commission, the Conservation Commission, and the Land Trust of Danbury at least 35 days prior to the public hearing for review and recommendation. 35 days follows most of the cases in the city that I'm aware of where we make such referrals prior to public hearings. Now, why those guys? Okay. The Planning Commission involvement is spelled out in section 8-24. We get these all the time, where there's any recommendation or proposal to buy or sell land. The Conservation Commission, I read your section. You have a rather broad charge. And I don't want you guys to be ignored in this process because that's part of your duties, is to look over the disposition of natural land, natural features. And then we added the land trust so that Bill will be happy. Okay. All right. That gives everybody who has an interest that we can foresee an opportunity to review and comment. Obviously, if it's a public hearing, it has to be noticed in the paper as well, so the general public knows that it's coming. Now, positive recommendation from the Planning Commission requires a majority vote from City Council for approval. A negative recommendation from the Planning Commission requires a 2/3 vote of City Council for approval. Approved acquisitions and purchases of lands and property shall be designated as fully part of the park for use as determined by the authority. Okay. So for adding land to the park, because the authority has the charge, the responsibility for determining the use of the park. Okay. So that keeps it in line with that. Now that's for acquisition. And again, it goes to the Planning Commission because it's an 824 referral, and that's required by state law. Any proposed sale, lease, or encumbrance of other lands requires a 2/3 vote of City Council for approval. Now that reflects current city policy. Intending to sell land in the city requires 2/3 vote, but I wanted this stated here so it doesn't get lost. Now the master plan. Approval of the master plan as recommended by the authority shall be by majority vote of the City Council, except that all amendments by City Council not recommended by the authority requires a 2/3 vote of City Council for approval. Because they're basically overriding the judgment of the authority. The approval of the master plan amendments are pursuant to a public hearing, referral to the Planning Commission for review and report at least 35 days prior. After adoption, all future proposals for the amendment or other revision of the master plan that's not made by the authority shall be referred by council to the authority and the Planning Commission 35 days prior to the hearing for review and recommendation. A negative recommendation by the authority of the proposed amendment, in whole or in part, requires a 2/3 vote of council for approval, supermajority. Okay. All other actions City Council specified in 824, well, this is a reminder, shall be referred to the Planning Commission for a report.
Regulating things like roads and sewer and water lines and things like that.
Now, the next section, this is the part of the existing regs where I have all these strikeouts that gives the master plan, makes the master plan the responsibility of the council. So I've taken that language and moved it to other sections. That's a 13A-52. I listed all the tax assessor numbers, and Sandy, if you find something I missed, let me know. We tried to be as thorough as possible, but recognizing that we may have missed something, we added our saving provision in here that is modified to include or delete subsequent acquisitions, purchase, sale, lease, or other conveyance of land and property within or to be added to Terry Walk Park. So if I've missed anything that's been added, that'll cover it. And now, commission membership. Suggesting a couple of things. Right now it reads the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation. His title is now the director of recreation. And then I'm saying one member of the Conservation Commission shall be an ex officio member. And the reason for that is that the Conservation Commission has the responsibility, well, this will promote coordination between the two bodies because conservation has this broad responsibility for, quote, the development and conservation of natural resources. Very broad language. And this brings them into, gives them a seat at the table, not a vote, but coordination and communication. And that's it.
Any questions from committee members?
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Alpern. Start off with the first page. Where is this the small parcel of land that you were talking about?
It's just south of the main body of, I didn't bring a map.
That's all right.
There. And the main body's up here. I think there's a subdivision that divides it
It's
off.
the past Deal Drive. At the
Right.
end of Deal
Where's
Drive.
that?
Deal Drive up Brushy Hill Road.
Okay.
And you go into Deal Drive and there's old Boston Post Road that goes
Yeah.
down in there. The city owns a piece that we call it the fish. It resembles the shape of a fish. And
What kind of fish?
whale, I believe, but I'm not positive. And that's the disjointed portion.
Okay. It's a small.
It's on Post Road,
Old Post Road, right.
on Post Road towards Brushy Hill on the other side?
The other side.
Between
going
Post Road
uphill.
and Brushy Hill?
It's behind the houses the house that they just built as you make the corner on the left-hand side. Down in the back there, it's up in the back.
I didn't think there's a house, a new house back there.
Well, not new, I mean, it's a few years, been a few years, the newer house. Yeah, it's actually down here, it's not in this picture. It's down in the part, it's down
Oh,
Sure.
where exactly, and what exactly would the land trust be doing as they're worded in here? 13A-51 subsection A. Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, and the Land Trust of Danbury. What would they be doing if they were included in this?
Their involvement, their involvement is only to review and make recommendation on purchase or sale of land. Purchase or sale of land. That's their involvement. They have an opportunity, they're notified of the pending public hearing. They're invited to submit a report to City Council. And it's transparency. Everybody who has a a preordained interest in this would be notified specifically. Now, the rest of the public is notified through public notice.
So the city would still have the overall authority?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Along with these other, the land trust and the commission?
Yeah, the land trust doesn't have veto power. Neither does the planning commission or the conservation commission.
Okay. Can I continue? Sure.
Through the chair, could I just add one
Go ahead.
comment to that? So the idea here operationally is to by giving them, specific 35-day notice, it gives those constituencies time to, study the proposed action and,
Yeah, that's fine.
and lobby for or against it, and so forth. So that's generally the idea.
And of course, they can show up at the public hearing too
Right.
and speak.
No, I don't have any problem. I just needed to get it explained a little more. We have a master plan which was adopted by the city council now. What does this do with that master plan? Now we have to get a new one, or is this gonna fit into that master plan? Or?
No. No, it stands.
So how do we fit this into,
It stands. We have a master plan.
right?
What you're doing is you're changing the procedure for, essentially for the future.
For future of the master plan. Okay. Amending it, yeah. But it doesn't. per
Otherwise,
se.
I would have said, the existing master plan is hereby repealed.
Okay.
And I don't think Sandy can stand through another
I know, it was a long time coming.
process.
I just wanted to get that straight now because I wouldn't want to put anybody through.
I wouldn't do that.
But through the chair, so this doesn't, in that sense, it doesn't change the master plan at all, except just prospectively, if they're amended.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. We had some questions.
Yeah, Deb, just in, we were just talking about the Terrywell, the Conservation Commission, Planning Commission, and Land Trust at Danbury, having at least 35 days or prior to the public hearing for review and recommendation. Could we please add the word written recommendation? Because recommendation means they could come up and say at the public hearing, but I think we discussed this at the last
Oh,
meeting,
sure.
that we would like it written so we can all see it ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's my one
I didn't
comment.
do that. We do that every time you first up to it, they're always
Yeah, but
I just assumed everybody else would, but.
Right,
I understand.
exactly.
Sure, no problem.
And can I kind
Sure.
of expand a little bit? I think the master plan is the master plan. This is the code of ordinances that we're amending that made the creation and the powers and everything for the master plan to take place, correct?
And it created the authority.
Right, and the authority. So, okay, I just wanted, I mean, I know that, I just wanted to double
Yeah.
check. But those are my questions.
Good. Did you have something else?
No, I'm all
Oh, you
set.
did? Okay. Yeah, actually, part of mine was already answered by you and by yourself, so. I will open it up if Bill or if Sandy or if anybody would like, has any questions that they would like answered, feel free to ask.
Does the master plan include any changes to Terrywell as it exists now?
No.
No. There are no plans to develop any part of it or anything?
Well, they have a full development plan, but for park facilities.
For park?
For park facilities, yeah. Sandy could fill you in on all of those details.
I think basically the idea is, if I may, that the master plan is the master plan the way it exists now. If we were to make any changes from now on for anything else that we want to do that isn't listed in there, we have to come back to the council with recommendations or changes, but there's
It includes
nothing.
proposed improvements.
Right, right. So the master plan is what the master plan
Like
is.
you're
and
not going to
there's-
build a firehouse then?
No, that's not.
Or in high school,
High
where
school.
all these rulers.
We'll give you, if you want to read a copy of
Baseball.
it. There's plenty of copies around.
FCI isn't in there.
And then
I
the
was gonna say a
second.
mosque, but
Let's not go there.
city.
The next question I have is that this applies to Terrywell. Are there any plans to apply the same rules to the other open spaces?
Wasn't asked to do that, but, you know, we could, it's food for thought.
Because the only land that's really protected is Richton, right? Am I correct in saying
The original proposal that this ad hoc committee was formed on 4 years ago was to address the 5 major parks and reservations. And, you know, it got slowed down a little bit, so the agreement a year ago was to address Terrywell only. And I think Shay said in his opening remarks, you know, that's obviously the most, well, it's the most important. It's the biggest, it's the most vulnerable, the Ives Trail and Greenway, close to downtown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in
Right
the original, the 5.
And I don't think whatever was written.
Okay.
Otherwise it starts to get.
If you want the other 4, I'll question.
Everybody should read that.
Everything costs me.
Did you want to add something? I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're good?
Sorry.
You good? Everybody good? Okay. Any other questions?
Yep, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I believe this proposal provides some protection, but not a whole lot. As I mentioned at the September 2nd meeting, it doesn't seem to address use. So it doesn't protect against a golf course, school, fire station, municipal garage, and so forth. And Dennis mentioned the master plan, but you know, I think some of the intent here is, well, number one, to do something now when we have a mayor, a city council, conservation commission, et cetera, that really cares about protecting open space, and put a layer of protection on now that prevents a mayor and city council 15 years from now who are all golfers and they decide that they want to build a golf course at Terrywell Park, and you know, so the Terrywell Park Authority has a responsibility for the master plan. Well, maybe they're all golfers too. So I think you know, there was an item in the paper yesterday, it was 25 years ago when this was first conveyed, and I think from everything I've heard, and I've been here that long, the intent of Terrywell Park is to keep it reasonably natural and restrict the use. And so I think sale, lease, other conveyance, I think are pretty well covered. I don't think it addresses the use to any extent.
If I may, read paragraph 4 on the first page. And this is a responsibility of the authority to prepare a master plan and amendments thereto for recommendation and approval by City Council as provided for herein for the use and development of Terrywell Park. Said plan to designate the construction, demolition, extension, renovation, or substantial improvement, excluding routine maintenance of all structures, lands, lakes, ponds, and water courses, conservation areas, park and recreational facilities, public utilities, roads, trails, and walkways, and other public facilities of the park. That's the responsibility of the authority. I don't think that there is any way that you can prevent, ultimately, this to remain forever wild. I might be wrong, and you can certainly take this to City Council, but they would have to be given out their authority in the future to make those kinds of decisions. And when I looked at this, I thought, and I might be wrong, but I didn't think they'd be willing to give up that authority. Now, if I'm wrong, fine.
The
It'll be-
authority to,
City council will have the ultimate authority to dispose of land. And I don't see any way around that. Now, I might be wrong. Maybe you guys will want to, with the way it is right now, declare that this will, for any future development has to comply with the master plan. The master plan is prepared by the authority and approved by city council. If city council wants to amend that plan, it requires a 2/3 vote if the authority disagrees. And I think that's about as far as you can go.
Were there no conditions attached to the sale?
I don't know, but I'm sure that if there were, there'd be ways around it.
the original sale.
Yeah, because
My understanding was that there were some people that wanted the kind of restrictions we're talking about, and the decision was no.
What was that?
That there would not be the kind of restrictions of use that we're talking about now. If that's true, I don't know, but I've been told that a number of times. So, but that's past history. It didn't happen, obviously,
Right.
at the very beginning.
Okay, I don't know.
But actually, that is true, and all that, obviously, I wasn't there, but, the effort to move in that direction ran into the same kinds of realities that the planning director's alluding to today. You know, the council did not want to forever give up their authority, even to the extent that, you know, it's even legally possible to do so, to deal with the park in the future. So, which is why we're embarking on these kinds of efforts to, you know, subject changes in the park sales, leases, what have you, to as much scrutiny as, you know, feasible. But, yeah, you know.
If I may add too, I had suggested originally other actions that could be taken that go beyond this. One, combine all the lots. There's a myriad of lots out there that are cobbled together into Terrywell Park. That doesn't prohibit subdivision of land in the future, but it does add another step. You gotta go to the planning commission, gotta have a public hearing, etc. It's another legal step. It reduces the chance of this being done expediently. Zone all the property RA 80, which by the way doesn't allow golf courses. I'm not sure it allows car houses, but I have to check on that. Most of the park is zoned RA 80. That's our most restrictive single-family zone. But there are lands along Southern Boulevard and Mountainville Road, which are zoned RA 20. They're both restrictive single-family zones, but the latter permits densities which are 4 times greater than the other. That makes it, that limits its appeal for development. You could do that. And you can revise the plan of conservation and development to strengthen its linkage to the master plan. You can do those things too. All of those things. I think we've done about as much as we can to make it difficult, not impossible, but difficult to just arbitrarily start developing the park. I'm not saying that it cannot possibly happen, but it would require some doing to make it happen. And you better have an awfully good reason, because I think there's a lot of steps along the way, a lot of hurdles that you'd have to clear. And in my experience in government, the only way to clear all those hurdles is if you have an awfully good argument.
With consensus.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're gonna need that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listen to what Mr. Montgomery is saying, and I understand where you're coming from, to protect this property as much as we can. I listen to Mr. Alpern and Corporation Counsel again, and I'm reading what we have here. And personally, I think we've got just about as much protection as we possibly can right now with what's in this, the revisions and the ordinance. I can't speak for the whole council, but I will go out on a limb and say, if anything were to come up, I feel pretty self-confident that any city council, anybody, the 21 that were sitting up there, there'd have to be a heck of a reason to change anything in what's going on in Terrywell right now. There really would. It's a jewel. It's gonna, as far as I'm concerned, it's gonna be there forever. But, you know, again, anything can happen. But I personally feel very good about what's in here. I think it's a good proposal, and I think it protects the property as much as we possibly can right now. Thank you.
No, I'm done. Second, Sandy.
Oh, you have a question? I'm sorry.
Just a question for Dennis. In reading the section 13A, nope, I'm sorry, 13A51, section, what is it, 2A, where it gives the added, anything that's going to be added to Terrywell, and it goes to the Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, and Land Trust. It doesn't mention the Park Authority in this. So just for clarification, and maybe it's somewhere else in here, if say the city decided to buy land and add it to the park, or say something like Old Quarry Nature Center was going to be added to the park, and it was the idea of the mayor or the council, the authority, would the authority have a say as to, would they be approached? Under this?
Well, yeah,
Because it's not really written in there, I don't know if it's just implied.
yeah.
Because that way you would get a report back from the authority as to whether or not the authority felt as though they could continue to, you know, to add that type of, say you were adding another 200 acres of land and it was something that needed to be maintained. That way they could give a written report on whether or not it was something that they were going to be able to take under their control, or if they were going to need additional funding or additional equipment or whatever to be able to maintain that. If it's just some land that's got some trees on it and it's not any big, you know, extra to it. But this way we would have that ability to be able to give you a written report also. And I don't see anything in here like that it comes back, you know, with the authority giving some input.
Yeah, you can. Although that would generate an amendment to the master plan, but. Yeah, you can add that if you want. I mean, what bolsters it.
I mean, I'm just thinking of just for the point of conversation. Say they decided to give us Old Quarry Nature Center for some crazy reason. They've got a field house. They have land that needs to be taken care of. Where would, you know, we would be able to then take a good look at it, determine whether or not how we'd be able to fit it into, you know, what our plans are and how we work things and that type of thing, and give you a report back as to what, you know, what the authorities' feelings were on something like that.
You can add that to A.
Sure, you can add.
What's the official name? Terrywell Park Authority,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right.
TPA.
We could add that just before planning committee, it doesn't matter where in
Yeah.
the sequence, to the Terrywell Park Authority, the planning commission, the conservation, and the land trust. That-
Because in certain circumstances, there might be that the authority obviously would come to the council or come to, the city and say, we heard about this piece of land that's for sale and we'd like the city to buy this and we think it's a great idea. Okay, well, you've got our endorsement there, but if it was the opposite way, then you'd have the authority's feelings on it.
Yeah, no problem.
Mhm. Okay. And they have,
Right, I've got it.
There's no way to keep the land for open space.
Mhm. You can put a deed restriction. But you can take it off too.
Deed restrictions can be removed.
Let's face it, the devil is within us. The devil is within us. I mean, you could put all kinds of conditions in here, but they can also take them out at some future date,
Maybe
you know.
the council.
In the final analysis, council is going to have the final say. And so vote for good people. That's right. Chad.
Through the chair, don't forget, it bears remembering that if a council wanted to take an action that would require amending some of these restrictions or other restrictions that aren't, that's a pretty arduous process in itself, if you think about it. If they, they still would have to, amend the ordinances to do something that contravenes these new restrictions, so. That's a major roadblock in itself to doing something hastily or unwise, if you think about it. But
Now, I don't know this thing about under A, about adding park authority. If it gets, I put in here, if it gets a negative recommendation from the planning commission, it would require 2/3 vote of city council. I want to check and see if we can expand that. I thought I had this in an earlier draft.
you had mentioned that.
Yeah, that if the authority gives a negative recommendation, that also requires a supermajority.
well,
By the council.
Yeah,
so we can add right here,
right.
where am I? A negative recommendation by the planning commission, comma, or by the TPA,
Mhm.
comma, Terrible Park, shall require 2/3 vote of city council for approval.
Right.
That's probably, I think that might have been it.
So,
But whether or not it was.
I'm sure it was, and my apologies, but these computers, I don't know. I'm gonna blame them. I'm gonna blame modern technology.
We know it was your fault.
Yeah,
then.
whether or not it was,
Trying to get off the hook.
it's a good addition.
Yeah.
Because we had that down there under the master plan. So,
Okay, any other questions? Committee members?
I mean, I think it in sum, it really strengthens the role of the park authorities. You have to view them as that they are the first line for determining the use of the park. They're the first line. Ultimately, city council has to approve, but we want to recognize that Terriwell Park Authority are the people with the main responsibility for this. Of course, I suppose you can look at it another way and say, well, suppose you guys go crazy and decide you're gonna sell a chunk of land so you have some operating capital. Not a bad idea. But then that gives council the opportunity to say, oh, no. I mean,
They have to
so
work
there
both
are
ways.
checks and balances both ways on this.
Jay, I have one more item to ask about. The very last section, the commission of the authority, appointments, memberships, and terms. I can remember back when the authority was first formed, and the Conservation Commission not being part of as an ex officio, that it was only the Parks and Rec Department at the time, in that there didn't want to be any sort of conflict of interests with the Conservation Commission. I can understand why you would want to put that in there now. I think I can see this, you know, as being another layer of protection and another group. But I'm kind of wondering, is it then going to be something that the other authorities, such as Richter or whoever, well, I guess Conservation Commission oversees Driscoll, right? And Bear Mountain. Would that be then the same type of thing? And what would their role be in, as an ex officio in
Well, they
the
don't have a vote.
authorities?
As ex officio, they don't have a
No
vote.
vote, right.
They do get all the correspondence, they get the minutes, they get the agendas. They're invited to all the meetings, and they can certainly speak at the meetings.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
I viewed it as a means of communication.
Mhm.
That's how I viewed it.
Right. And I know from at the beginning, when I attended a few of the earlier on meetings, there was some problem with and I'm not saying the Conservation Commission of now today is like this, but there were problems way back when, in that the Conservation Commission was looking at it as it was their project and it was their property and they were going to, and you couldn't have, you know, disconnects. You couldn't have programs going on at Terrywell that they may be doing someplace else, and it got into quite a bit of a huge altercations way back when. And I think that was one of the reasons why, when they did this, that they only put the Parks and Rec Commission as part of it. Since then, we've also seen the Parks and Rec Commission. We had a board member who was on their board, the co-members, you know, one on their board, she was also on our board, wrote a letter to the mayor asking that that this part of the
Membership.
code not be part of that anymore. That organization doesn't meet very often. They never talked about Terrywell. The only reason
Which
was ever
organization?
Parks and Rec Commission.
Well, we were here, it's the director.
And now it's the director. But I think it doesn't it still say?
That's what it always said.
Said one mayor should also be a member of the Parks and Rec Commission. That second paragraph, or second sentence. One of the said members shall also be a member of the Parks and Rec Commission. And then the director and the Conservation Commission would be ex officio.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's existing.
Right, it's existing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What I was saying was there had been, if you're making changes now, I would ask you to kind of consider what they had said. When this board member,
They don't want to be interested. They want to be involved.
the person who was on it, it was Carol Smith, if you remember Carol,
Sure.
Carol Meeker Smith, moved to South Carolina a couple of years ago. And before she left, she sent a letter to the mayor asking that this be changed in this code. Because the Parks and Rec Commission, she would always go to their commission meetings. Nothing was ever brought up about Terrywell. They weren't interested in knowing about it. She would bring up things and it was kind of poo-pooed. It was never anything. And she actually said that it was a waste of time for us to be involved with the Parks and Rec Department at the time.
Well,
We're not into recreation. I mean, we're if a frisbee gets tossed,
They have-
that's about
They
it.
have a different,
But,
they have a
you know,
different program.
it's totally different program
This
than what
isn't
we
Rogers
are,
Park.
so, right. So that's why I'm just saying that letter had come in a while ago. It's time, you know, you're working on changes. If you want to look at that, might be the time to look
Well,
at
I would think that just inviting the director as an ex officio should suffice
Mhm.
to carry back if there's any message or need.
right, so you're not cutting them out
it.
completely.
Right, we're not cutting them
No.
out completely, right, right. And we have no problem with
And who
having
knows, you
them
may
there.
want them to run a program for you
Mhm.
at some point.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And they come to us during the summer, or their summer programs, they have kids out hiking, and
There
we
you
do
go.
cooperative stuff back and
Okay.
forth, but I don't know that it needs to be a member,
Well,
one of our
no,
members
well,
going.
Yeah, that, we can still have that.
Oh, yeah.
One won't be a member of the Parks and Rec. so.
Right, well, what I'm saying is then we have to add a member somewhere else, because you have to have an uneven number.
No, it's still 9. It
No.
would still be 9. They'd
No.
still be a member of the authority, they just wouldn't have to go to the conservation. We already have 9 members, and one of our board members has been appointed as the person who would then also go to the Recreation Commission meetings. So we already have 9. She just wouldn't be going to
I
that
don't know
other
what
meeting.
comes
Well, that's one of the 9, but there'll still be 9 members would still have to be appointed, they just wouldn't be, no appointee would be a member of the Parks and Rec Commission, that's all.
No,
Because the next thing you know is Conservation Commission. And then the Planning
And then
Commission.
the Planning Commission,
And then the Redevelopment Authority.
and then Rector Park will sneak in and run a
Rector
golf
Park
course.
will
And
come
and then Bill will say, I told you so.
So what did you decide there?
in. And the EIC.
Oh, we're gonna strike the last sentence on page 4. Yeah, page 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So what have we got?
I don't know, why are we doing this? I don't understand why we're doing this.
I'm doing what,
You're
striking?
gonna strike the Park and Rec, why would you wanna take them out of the picture?
Because apparently they're not interested.
They're not interested, and number 2, you've already got the coverage by sending all of our information to the Director of Recreation.
If you look at the
You already,
next sentence.
it's redundant.
The next,
Yeah, I got
it
it.
says
It's
director
redundant.
in the next
Right,
one.
yeah. So we're already doing what we need to do as far as keeping them in the loop. We just don't have to have them, that one person who's part of the commission, of the Recreation Commission. It's the only difference.
I don't know why it was ever written that way.
I don't know.
They had a broader purview years ago.
Oh, okay. But I'm surprised that that was in conservation, wasn't.
I don't agree with it, but that's okay. I don't know, it's just something,
Well, apparently they're, according to Sandy, they're not too interested. They do have a whole different kind of
that's
effort.
fine. She's up there, so I.
More active.
And I think
Yeah.
it's more active, and this is more passive recreation. And you do have the directors invited to all the meetings as an ex officio member for communication. And I think that's important.
All right.
And I believe if you speak to Nick, he'll probably tell you the same thing, because he and I have had this discussion before.
No.
Are you good, Fred?
I'm all set, go ahead.
Well, I actually am gonna have a procedural question now. Okay, then, in the motion, we do not have to include all of the amendments we just made tonight, or are they're implied because they were,
Yeah, well, what we're gonna send to the council will be this document with these additions, you know, Terrywall Park being added in 2 places at the top of page 3.
right, should I enumerate them, or can I
No,
say
you don't
with
really
the,
have to.
with the additions, or
It'll
just
be very
As agreed to.
It'll be, maybe you could,
with the additions agreed to?
because otherwise it'd be very confusing to pass along to the council. And, you know, the word written, and what was the only other change is, you know, the deletion of the last sentence on page 4. So council will see a clean copy of those
Right.
additions already.
So we're adding, this is just for the record now, under 13A-51, we're adding the words, we're adding Terrywell Park Authority,
In line 3.
in line 3.
Yeah.
We're adding the word written at the end of line 4.
Before recommendation, yeah.
Yeah,
Line 7, we're adding the planning commission and the
or,
Terrywell
Or.
Park, or the
Or.
Terrywell
Or.
Park Authority.
should say or.
Shall,
Or.
right,
Either one.
okay, so we're adding that on that.
And striking the last thing. 13A-53, last sentence on page 4.
Yeah,
So in other words, what will come out through the chair, what will come out of the
Striking.
committee, if it's approved, will be, you know,
yep, I
a
just
clean
want,
copy of.
right, I just wanted
Yeah.
all of it on. And then we're
Is it-
striking
yeah.
13A-53, the last line on page 4, and the first word on page 5.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Motion to recommend to the full city council adoption of proposed amendments to the Danbury Code of Ordinances, Article 5, Terrywell Park Authority, with the additions agreed to in this ad hoc committee, with the intent to strengthen the protection of Terrywell Park.
We have a second?
Second motion.
Second by Mr. Visconti. Any discussion? No? I would like to, I think this is a fantastic piece of work, actually. Took a little while to get crafted, but I think it's, I know some here may disagree, but I think it certainly helps. It's gonna be that extra added layer, I think, that's gonna certainly make things more difficult for those in the future that may want to make some changes. And I know, and I appreciate our Dennis Alpern's work on this, as well as our corporation counsel. Was not an easy task, and I know a lot of time and due diligence went into it. So I certainly want to recognize you for, and years of work, actually, right, have gone by in trying to get something accomplished, and I appreciate all your work on this, and as well as committee members here. And we've gone through, it's been such a long committee, we've actually gone through different committee members as well. So, with that being said, then I will try your minds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? No? Motion passes unanimously.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Teicholz. Any discussion on that? No? All those in favor? Aye? Okay.
Shane,
Thank you.
I'd
Thank you
also
guys.
like to thank Bill Montgomery for